well-being industry, there is so much money in it. Yoga is the antithesis of capitalism. My dad said someone else is going to do it, and they're not going to do it in the way that you would do it.
Today on Time we discuss, I have Basanti with me. Basanti, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. I love what you do, and I think it's very necessary and a great resource for people who don't know what they may want to do and what's out there. So thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad to do this. There's so many people I feel like can benefit from knowing what is really available to them. And you're just a part of the puzzle. And I love this. So you're an owner of a corporate health and wellness company. And I love this. You know, I was looking at your website. It seems like you go into businesses, into organizations. You work with the employees with health and well-being on a physical layer, might be doing some yoga or something like that. There's an online component. There is so much to unpack here. I am super excited. So let's start here. As a business owner of this type of company, what is a typical day like for you?
I should start by saying that no day is ever exactly the same. So every day in the week is a little bit different based on what I've got in the diary. So it could start with an early morning yoga session for a private client. I have a couple of people who are executives in the companies that I also provide yoga services to as a group. It could be a corporate session. These early morning sessions for me tend to be based on Zoom or Teams, so online, because I'm actually not a morning person, controversially. I think it helps to be a morning person if you're a yoga instructor, but I'm not. I have made my peace with that. So when there are early morning sessions, with clients that are my clients, I tend to send my instructors that I work with. But I myself, I would teach maybe a 7:30 a.m. or 8 a.m. class online. After that, I will have my breakfast. I will go on to some admin. It could involve anything from answering emails to prospects, calling them, to writing invoices, which I tend to do myself because then I feel I'm a little bit of a control freak. Sometimes I give it to other people. Sometimes I just do it myself. And it could involve shooting content for socials. I've actually only recently started working sort of more professionally on socials with someone who really knows what they're doing. And it is quite involved, a lot more involved than I would want it to be. But it's also very much worth it. And I could shoot content for my online subscription platform where I have like lots of classes on there and people can pay as you go or have a membership option. So that's that. I do teach a lot, but I also have a lot of time to do other things in the day that are very much necessary as well when you own a business. So I like to say, and that's one of the manifestations whenever I meditate, I say a variation of I have a lot of time. I have so much time. I have an abundance of time. And that is my affirmation, my sankalpa. And it really does help because it is in the head when you think that you don't have enough time. And when you tell yourself you have enough time and you structure your day properly, then you do have enough time.
I completely agree with that. I feel like that the mental aspect of one's perception of time is huge. And I remember reading this a while ago where it's like if you give someone a task to do and you give them 8 hours to do it, it'll take them 8 hours. And if you give them 2 hours to do it, it'll take them 2 hours. I mean, obviously there's going to be exceptions to that, as needed. But just generally speaking, people tend to fill their time as needed. So having the perception of having abundance of time and getting everything done you need to get done, that's really, really neat.
And also the fact that as a business owner, I think there is no one else, there's no boss breathing down your neck. There's no one to say, this is your deadline, you better get this done. So you have to be very much self-motivated. You need to structure your time properly. And there's certain ways that you can do that quite easily. Sometimes people find it challenging, but I think at some point you get quite good at it. And I've been doing it for a while. So
you started your business, I believe you said 10 years ago. I think it was 2014, you said? Okay. So
yes, I think we incorporated actually 2015, but we started sort of, I call it a soft launch in 2013.
So how did you get started with that? I believe you said you and your sister created this company together. So how did the company actually get started? How did you begin deciding that, this was for you, that health and well-being and yoga? How did that all come into play in the beginning?
Yoga has always been part of my life. My father's Indian, and he taught both my sister and me when we were 4 and 6 years old, respectively. And I think I was at a point in my life where I was a script writer for film and television. And while I really enjoyed that, and I love being creative in that way, and I'm actually still keeping that up on the side, I I think I got annoyed at the fact that sometimes I said yes to things that I didn't actually believe in just because the money was right. And yeah, and that's just, you don't sometimes have the luxury to say no. And I felt that it was at a point where I wanted this to be something that I wanted to do on the side. Meanwhile, my sister had just had her second child and did not want to be tied down by a job that didn't give enough flexibility and wanted to do something else. So I think it was one Christmas that we decided we should start a company together, but we didn't know what. And our dad just threw the idea out there and how about you do yoga, corporate yoga? And my sister was completely up for it. And I said, I'm not so sure. I don't want to make money from yoga, because that was always something that I did, one, just for myself. And whenever I did teach, whether that was at university or just something on the side here or there, it was not for money. It was because it was my friends. And I just feel like the well-being industry, there is so much money in it. And yoga is the antithesis of capitalism. So for me, it took a while to sort of get there, but it helped that my dad said to us, well, someone else is going to do it and they're not going to do it in the way that you would do it. And then you'll be like, we should have done it and we should have done it better. So I thought, yeah, he's right. And the idea with corporates was just because both of Mira and I, my sister and I, had experience in the corporate world as well, and in other very stressful industries. So the film industry is extremely stressful as well. One of my clients is, a big film company. It is just very, very stressful, and life in general is stressful. And I feel that when you go into yoga studios, you have already got people in front of you who have been converted to yoga, hence they are there. You don't need to convince them. Similar with gyms. But in corporate environments, you often get people thrown at you who would never, ever want to do yoga, but their employer has said, well, this is a mental health initiative, you better go. So they are there and they're a little bit skeptical. And then I can talk to them in the language that they will understand, a language that maybe people wouldn't use in a yoga studio. So I talk about science, etc. So that is basically how it started. The idea that we wanted to add value rather than be just another yoga studio. And yeah, and that really was it. At the time when we started 10-ish years ago, there was no one else, or there was one other company that provided yoga in the office, in offices, but they did something very different. It was more sort of gymnastics focused, fitness focused, and not the focus that we had on mental health and well-being and really sort of alleviating pain from the body, musculoskeletal disorders, etc. So yeah, very different time then than it is now.
I really, really like that quote that you gave about your father, saying that, and I'm going to paraphrase it. If you don't do it, someone else is going to do it, and not going to do it in the way that you want it to be done. And I think that's awesome. And for any aspiring entrepreneur out there, I feel like that's really, really sound advice and something that should be taken strongly. I love that. Absolutely love that. Now, let's talk about getting into corporate for the first time, because prior to seeing your website, I had no idea that such a thing like this existed. So how difficult was it for you to actually get into a corporation and say, hey, this is my business, this is what we want to do. Are you up for it? Or did they approach you? How did that very first corporate client come to your doorstep?
Oh, the very first one. I'm not even sure I remember our first client. Um, so it was a combination. My sister had been working in business development for quite a while, and she actually, when we started off, she said, well, I'm going to do all the business development and business admin, and you'll do the teaching. It kind of became something different, and she started teaching as well, just because I'm based in London and she was based outside of London in Surrey. But also because my perception was very different. I basically thought that I had, I knew of myself that I had basically done yoga every single day of my life ever since my father started teaching me. I thought that was the same for my sister, but it ended up not being that. She hadn't kept it up in the way that I had. So she focused very much on cold calling companies, explaining what we were doing. And maybe 0.1% of companies were like, oh, we've already got someone. Everyone said, but how does that work? You come to offices to teach yoga? I don't understand. We have no space, we have no mats. And we said, we can provide mats if you have the space. We can teach you just sitting at your workstation. You don't have to get changed out of your work clothes. We make it as inclusive to everyone. If you've never done yoga before, you can still do it, because there is this idea that as a yogi, yogi, you have to be flexible. But that's not the case. A yogi is someone who is enlightened, who is calm in any situation and has shed all the stuff that we don't need, you know. But yeah, that's how we came to it. A lot of business development happened through cold calling. I did not actually approach many friends of mine in different companies just because I didn't want to impose. I think at that point, I felt like that was not the way. We had initiatives where we said we'd give a free trial, but we stopped that fairly early on because we realized that when you offer a free trial, people don't appreciate it. They think it's a freebie and they just think, oh, whatever. And we actually showed up at one company that just didn't, they'd forgotten about us. And that wouldn't have happened had they paid for us. And then we started Google AdWords, and that was fantastic. So that the people who actually were looking for us found us. And there was, as I said, hardly any competition. So that was really, really easy. And within a year, we were fine and we had enough clients. And we've kept pretty much almost all of the clients. And if we did lose clients, it was because of situations, offices moving away, or moving to a place that had a gym integrated with yoga classes, so they couldn't justify doing both. So it was that sort of thing. But most of our clients have been with us for those 10-ish years that we've been going.
That's really fascinating what you said about the free trial, the free trial, essentially. I remember reading something a while ago, maybe been a year or two at this point, and it echoed exactly what you said, that this case study or person or whatever it was, they offered this thing for free, and very little people engaged with it. Or they maybe if it was a video, they watched it but not all the way through or whatever it was. But the minute they started charging money for it, adoption and engagement skyrocketed. And it's because exactly what you said, where it's like they're paying for it, they want to get the value out of it for free. It's just kind of like, oh, yeah, well, I'll get to it when I get to it. It's free,
Yeah, exactly. It's funny as human beings and how the human mind works.
You mentioned that you have an online component. You work in person as well. Was COVID the catalyst for that? Were you doing anything online prior to 2020, or was that like the change you adopted and you moved forward and haven't? What was that like?
We had absolutely no online component at all before COVID. In fact, I had never even heard of Zoom. So it was a total, actually what happened was that one of our clients said after a session when we knew the lockdown was going to happen, they asked, would you be able to do the session online just as a trial to see how it works? And obviously, I'm going to say yes, because why would I say no? But I was very skeptical and just thought, how is this going to work online? But the setup was fine. I had a nice background that looked quite nice and relaxing. In many ways, at that time, it was just, it was my living room. But people liked seeing where I live because that made it even more personal. And they realized that they saw a different side to me that they hadn't seen before. So it was really nice. And I think COVID was such a special time, obviously quite difficult for a lot of people. And I think it brought people together. It added some sanity and some normality to their days. And I know people spend a lot of time online in Zoom meetings, etc. But that was all work related, whereas our yoga was well-being related. It was just for them, and they saw each other in each other's environments. So I think in many ways that was a really great team bonding session for them as well. But everything started with Zoom. And when the lockdown then stopped, and people went back to offices, actually what happened was that many companies hired us as back to office initiatives just to make people less scared, give more incentive of being in the office when people had gotten used to just being at home all the time. So we would come in and teach a meditation session or a breathing session to calm people down or to focus them. And after a while, I think actually what sparked it was then one time I had COVID again, and I called up a company and said, is it okay if we do one session online just because I might still be contagious? And they said, yeah, that's fine. And it worked so well that they then suggested to take it back online. And they were not the only company who did that. So now I've got, I myself go to 3 different places that, corporates, one company with 2 different places, and then a second company. And that I do in person. And I love that. I really love it. It does mean that I have to travel and I lose time, and time is money, but I really love it. And at the end of the day, time isn't money. You should do what you love. And this is what your podcast is about as well, right? You need to know what it is that you enjoy and then maximize that rather than thinking of the bottom line all the time.
Let's talk about education. To do what you do, what kind of education is typically required? Do you need to go to a traditional university? Can you do like an online program to be certified? Do you have to be certified? What does that part look like from a yoga instructor standpoint?
Interesting question. And especially in the yoga world, it's a really, really interesting one, because lots of the gurus that I had would not be allowed to teach in a gym in London, because they wouldn't be considered, because they wouldn't have had the education that they recognize over here. And I'm sure it's the same in the US as well. So over here, it's all about an 80-hour, 200-hour, 800-hour teacher training. And this is one of the things that annoys me about my industry, the well-being industry in general, especially that yoga space, is that we look at teaching yoga as a way to make money from yoga. We see it more as fitness classes, and we're learning things about the essential things, anatomy, physiology. Maybe sometimes there's some philosophy about it, but it's all about getting that, getting the certificate and saying, now you're allowed to teach. But actually what yoga is such a complex science of life, that everything that you learn throughout your whole life, from day one until the day you die, is part of your own experience of becoming a better and better teacher. And that is what it should be like. So yes, in the West, you need to learn and have a certain degree. My yoga degree, actually, like I said, I learned from my father when I was 4 years old. But ever since then, whenever we went back to India, which was every single year, I would have different gurus, and then the same gurus teach me more and more things. But the way that they teach is a very different way. Sometimes you have snippets of conversation, or they will say something that only 3 weeks later, or maybe sometimes 3 months later, you realize was actually extremely profound and given to you as these words of wisdom at a time when they knew, because they knew you well, knew that you were ready for that knowledge. And that is how it works. So in a very, very different way. And that is how I train my instructors as well. I train them not with a program of, now you've done your 200 hours. Maybe at some point I will start that. But it is more sensing when they're ready for what, and giving them the knowledge when they need it. But if you want to break into the yoga industry in the West, you should look at a school that offers that yoga teacher training. I can say for myself, I've had problems. So I also teach at a leisure center around the corner, and at a high-end health club in London as well. So two very, very different places. They could not be more different. I teach there not for the money, but because I really, really enjoy it. I love the community, and I love what it gives to me. But it was very difficult to have my degree, which was a really, very, very deep going degree, much, much deeper than all the things that you can learn here with your 200 hours or 800 hours, because it was 2 years of full immersion of yoga, naturopathy, Ayurvedic knowledge as well. And that was not recognized in the same way, because what people want to see here, to give that tick of, yes, this is how many hours you've been trained, is, yes, but what is the yoga in it? But I'm saying, but yoga is knowing the body, knowing naturopathy and Ayurveda, knowing the history and philosophy, etc. It's not just about the physical practice. But if you want to make life easy for yourself, you start with maybe an 80-hour or 200-hour teacher training course in your own country, where you know that people in the area where you want to teach are actually going to accept it. But then I would highly, highly recommend that you keep up self-study and maybe go to India and immerse yourself in a school that is so different from yours that it can actually add a lot of value, because of that completely different perspective that it adds to you, because that will make you a much, much better teacher.
That is awesome. That is really, really awesome advice. I love that. It's taking working locally, build up what you need to do locally, and then also getting that broader perspective. I love that. I've heard several people say this to me. They recognize the value of yoga, that it's so good for you, but they just can't get into it. What would you recommend for that person? Is there like another path they can take to kind of ease themselves into, and I'm talking about more so as a student, like taking a yoga class. Is there
Yeah.
something that they could kind of like ease themselves into and then eventually like build up to doing yoga? What would you recommend for something like that?
Definitely, exactly what you said. I think people get very much overwhelmed by the big things in life, right? They think they need to do yoga for 90 minutes in order for it to have an effect. Actually, it doesn't. One of my friends does a daily 1 minute long meditation on her socials, and she's been doing that for a long time, for many, many months. And 1 minute is a start. So whether it's meditation, whether it's just your me time, you could say that your yoga practice starts in the shower because everyone has a shower every day, or maybe not every day, I don't know. But let's say you have a shower every day, right? Um, how about while you're in that shower, if you think you are so time poor that you don't have time for anything else and you can't fit it in to your daily schedule because there is no time, add it to something you're already doing. And then while you're in the shower, pay attention to your breath. Pay attention to the sensations in your body, because that's essentially what yoga is. When people talk about yoga as the great moves and, oh, I'm touching my toes and I'm getting really flexible, that is not what yoga is about. Yoga is a way of tuning into your body so that you're always constantly aware of what is going on in your body, so that you're more in control of what the body is doing, and ultimately change the architecture of the brain to achieve liberation and enlightenment. And that's a big one, and we may not get there in one lifetime, but that is the path towards the path up that very steep mountain that you may not reach the top, but it's still a nicer view when you're halfway up.
It actually reminds me, talking to other people from a creative perspective, people that have a hard time writing a book or creating art of some capacity. A similar thing that I was told is that you take a certain period of time each day, a minute, 5 minutes, whatever it is, because each minute, 5 minutes, whatever it is ultimately going to propel you forward. And then maybe you could try to ramp it up a little bit. And I love the idea about starting the meditation while you're in the shower, because like that, it's a big part of everyone's life. So finding the time there to kind of get started, that's a really, really awesome. I like
Yeah,
that.
I'm a big fan of making life easy because we tend to make it hard for ourselves anyway. We're just wired that way, right? And if you can make it easy for yourself, why wouldn't you? And it starts with just tiny little things. And once you realize that that makes you feel good, you'll want more of this anyway. So then it becomes a longer process. And whatever it is, you might start with breathing. You might start with just a few stretches early in the morning, something that you do anyway, just going like this, like that, just something that makes you feel good. And then you expand on that. And then rather than going onto YouTube and finding a video that is, I don't know, 50 minutes long, go onto YouTube and find find a class that is 5 minutes long. And that's also okay.
That is awesome and great, great advice for someone wanting to get started. I love that. Now, I am running a little short on time, but one thing I like to do when I'm speaking with someone, I like to give them the opportunity to talk about a cause they believe in, a project they're working on. If they want to talk more about your business, I'd love to extend you that opportunity. So the floor is yours.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. Um, I would like to speak about my online subscription platform, which is fairly new still. It's been going for just over a month. And in it, what I basically do is I upload very different videos. They're all classes. Some of them are 20, 30 minutes long. Others are maybe an hour or over an hour long. And I try to appeal to people who are absolute beginners, as well as people who have this because of the corporate yoga. Obviously, I do a lot for people with their musculoskeletal disorders, just alleviating tension from the desk body, so to speak. So there's that posture focus. There's also classes for those who are very advanced in their asana practice and like to be challenged and maybe flowing fast through their postures. And there is those that are very much about the stillness. So they are quite challenging because we stay in very challenging postures for a long time. But that to me is very extremely meditative, because you find so much out about your body, not just in general, but on that given day, about the way that you're staying in a posture, about the way that you're feeling your body, about the way that you're breathing, and how your breath can adjust and become calm again, no matter where you are. And if it doesn't, then maybe you need to change the posture or something else. And that's basically what I do. Upload one class every week, but 5 classes per month. So you get a bonus one in most months. And yeah, there's chair yoga as well. So there's something for everyone, really. And people can head to courses.patak-yoga.com. I'm sure we can put that in the notes. And yeah, it's affordable. You can do pay as you go, or you can have a membership option as well.
That is fantastic. I'll make sure I get that. I'll put those links for you in the show description. I'll put it on the website. I'll put it all over so when people are looking for you, they can easily find you. Santi, it's been absolutely awesome having you on Time We Discussing. We learned what it's like to be a yoga instructor.
Thank you very, very much for having me.